Welcome back to From Corporate to Cashflow. We're Andrea Cannon and Liz Schwab, two pharmacists navigating the process of building time and financial freedom through real estate investing and lending. Navigating the journey is difficult, but our podcast guests are experts in showing us how it's done. And today we have Edgar Vargas with us today. Edgar, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Liz, for having me. Pleasure being here with y'all. Super excited to share my journey and see if we can inspire a few people out there and to look into real estate investing.
Yeah, definitely. Very excited to have you on the podcast and hear more about you. So let's jump into it. And Edgar, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into real estate? Real estate. So basically, where you were starting and how did you transition to where you are today?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I've always looked at real estate side, but I'm come from an immigrant family, so it's always been in the construction business. But I've my passion was like, hey, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to become a professional. And full circle coming back around, it's like, why did yes, it's great I did that, but looking back at it, there's so many opportunities within real estate space. So I started the journey about 3 years ago after so many years of just thinking about it by joining Pace's community. So I joined Sub 2 and learned a lot about creative finance. And initially, I was thinking I was going to do wholesaling. I was like, well, I'm going to do wholesaling. I think that's the way. They make big chunks of money there. But after a few months, I was able to do, I think, 3 deals. But I didn't really find that as my lane. So along those 6 months of doing wholesaling, I lent money out, and that deal did not go as planned. So, which made my curiosity more into why did that deal not go as planned? And I attended a private money mastermind, a private money lending mastermind here in Georgia, hosted by Abraham Gray and Alexis Morgan. So I attended that mastermind to deep dive more into private money lending, and since then I've focused on that side of the lane, which is the lending side, the money side of real estate, on how that works and how that moves. So it's kind of been my journey, like a big summary, but happy to dive into details.
Yeah, I know we love this because Andrea and I are also lending together, and we also attended that same workshop. So we will have a lot of questions for you. It's very applicable. I did want to touch base on like balance because it sounds like you currently are still employed with the W-2 job as well. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I am employed, and I think that's where, the wholesaling is a business where you need to be committed 24/7 to it, with those constant follow-ups on, whether it's a direct to agent or whether it's a direct to seller conversations. And that time commitment wasn't there for me, even though people say you could do it like in 2 hours every day. I guess it is possible, but for me, once I dove into the lending side of the business, it felt better building relationships with investors, having those conversations with people that have capital that are looking to deploy, or people that need capital, right? I think it's for me, it was easier to build those relationships. And that's where I pivoted to. But yeah, I currently have a W-2, and it's just building those stronger relationships. And whether it's an investor looking for fix and flip money, or whether it's a professional looking to get into real estate, how to guide them correctly without making, emotional decisions, making sure that everything's vetted correctly, making sure their capital is secured. That's where I felt a little bit better as far as time management goes.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I understand what you're saying about the wholesaling component too, about struggling with maybe only having 2 hours a day. I think that lending allows a good balance for individuals that do have a W-2 as well, especially if they're working with someone who already has it kind of tied in and you can just connect with them and follow their process. So I think that it's a great opportunity for us that have full-time W-2s and are trying to manage our time, right? I would love to dive a little bit more into maybe some of your experiences because I feel like there's a lot of not unknowns, but misconceptions in lending money in real estate. And I think you had said that maybe your first deal didn't go as planned. Are you able to maybe share some details into what you learned or what didn't go as planned for that deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Being inside a community is always great, right? You get surrounded by people that are doing great things. A lot of people say that are doing great things and may not necessarily be there, right? So initially, when I joined, I was super excited, and I blame myself for not asking enough questions. And I think when you join real estate and you're looking to deploy capital, you should not stop asking questions. Like even if it's like there's no dumb question, right? You just got to ask, like, and if you don't know what to ask, there's always ChatGPT nowadays. If you don't have anybody in your inner circle that understands real estate, so I blame myself for not asking enough questions. And this was a creative transaction. Initially, I didn't know. I felt good about the person that I was lending money to. I felt good about the person that had made me the introduction. So it was one of those deals where it's like, I don't understand yet, but I feel good, right, with this that made the introduction. And yes, it's great, that feeling, right? Because you do need to have that sort of um, like Pace always says, right, you'll vibe with the tribe, right, your tribe. And to me that was like, hey, I've had a great conversation with this person. We know each other for a few months, right, because I was fairly new to the community. But not understanding the deal on how your money's protected, that was one of the worst decisions I made, right? It's Yeah, so it was a creative transaction. It was a deal where this investor acquired the property and the mortgage was in place, and they were going to wrap this mortgage and sell it to an end buyer. So the existing mortgage was going to stay in place. I was going to provide the money to acquire this property. And in 4 to 6 months, the idea was that they were already going to have a penalty buyer or somebody that cannot apply for a normal loan or anything like that. And that buyer was going to come in and pretty much pay me out, right? Because they were going to come with a huge down payment, and then I was going to be out, and they were going to have this new buyer. Well, that buyer never happened. Um, Within that time frame, they told me um, it happened maybe a year and a half later, or a year. I lose track of time pretty fast, and during that time frame, it's like, oh my god, how is my money secure, right? Like,
Right.
what paperwork did I sign?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Come to find out that I only had signed like a JV agreement, which is when you're lending money, please, yeah, understand the documents you're signing. So I had only signed a JV agreement, which has no protection on my money, you know.
Yeah. Right.
So that was one of the big knucklehead decisions I made. And it's rough, right? When you tell your wife that you're gonna deploy money and you're gonna make and it wasn't a crazy return either. So I felt it was, I think we were going to make 12% flat over the 4 months, or 10 or 12%. I don't remember exactly, but so yeah, that didn't happen. But once the rat buyer got in place, after continuously talking to this investor, and somebody in his team really helped me like spearhead this whole thing of trying to recoup some of my money back. I was able to recoup some. I'm still like $8,000 short, which is nothing in
Mhm.
comparison to other members that have lost a whole bunch of money. But it was one of those pain lessons that was tough to bear. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my god.
Right, right. I mean, we all go through it, right? We learn by our mistakes. And especially in lending, sometimes I think it's kind of confusing when we're first starting all the documents that are needed to accurately protect ourselves, right? So there's a lot of complexities to it, which goes back to linking up with people that have experience and making sure that you're protected with your lending money. So I do have a question because I'm sure as you continue on, you probably have a much better system. And you talked about how you're probably like much better with securing the money that you're lending with the documents and such. And so hopefully you're creating like a better buffer of passive money that you're receiving now. So let's back up a little bit. What inspired you to start looking for that passive income in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just, hey, where could we make our money grow a little bit more, right? We have our money. Um, the last 2 years ago, right, at Squat Up Summit, Grant Cardone said, right, how people's home equity is just sitting there not being used, right? And like what is that money really doing, or your savings accounts, like what is that money really doing. For the past like 8 years or so, I followed Dave Ramsey a lot. So that whole debt free journey, right? And it's like, yes, we accomplished being debt free. Amazing. What's next? Right. And I could see that Dave Ramsey's journey works, right? Because you're debt free, and being debt free does give you some sort of freedom, but at the same time, it doesn't really make your money grow more, right? You can max out your 401ks, you could do all this stuff, but there wasn't really a sense of continuous growth on that money that we just had stashed there. So that was one of the reasons where I was like, you know what, we either need to bring more money through wholesaling, or potentially start acquiring rental properties, or that last option, which was private money lending, that the lending side of the business. Now, I just don't lend my own money because, we're all tied to our own amount of money, but you could easily broker hard money loans, or, bring other people's money into other projects, and still make profit off of that, arbitraging other people's money. So that was one of the things that really got me into the lending space as well. But the main reason was like, coming from the Dave Ramsey circle, was like, yes, debt free is awesome, but what's next?
Mhm.
And that was it. Was either starting like my own business, or staying on my W-2, and now doing the lending business.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's interesting to me. I do love this, but it's interesting to me that your first lending deal did not go well, and you're like, I'm going to do more of this. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of the opposite of what we hear from a lot of people. And what was it like about like when it didn't work out? Why were you like, I still see that this makes sense? I mean, I love it. I'm telling you, I love it. But what was it about lending that made you say, okay, I'm going to keep going anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I just got obsessed, right, with the mistake I made, and I was like, I can't allow other people to make that same mistake.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like I told the guy, I was like, dude, I'm not donating money. If I wanted to donate money, I could have picked my own charity for that cause. But this is business, right? So when people get into real estate, yes, everybody wants to get into real estate investing, but ensuring that your capital secure is one of the most important things, right? There is risk involved, even stock markets or whatever you invest in, crypto, whatever it is, there's risk. But understanding the risk, and I felt like, I come from, Donald Miller talks about being the guide to others. And to me, that was like kind of like I made this mistake. I want to be that guide for others, right? I wanted them to succeed through my failure that I already committed. And that's where I was kind of like, you know what, I think this is where I need to be at. This is the space where I need to be at. Even though sometimes it feels like I'm not making progress, right? Because it takes a while to build those relationships. It takes a while for people to come to you and say, hey, I need capital, or hey, I need capital. Let's deploy it in some of the projects you have going on. And, that it takes time, but I think long term, I think that for me was a better, and it's still hard, right? Shiny syndrome object now, Pace always throws projects at us, but staying focused to that thing where I was like, this is where I think I find myself, and going back to that guide mentality. I coach soccer for little ones between ages 8 to all the way to 14, and I'm always passionate about how that journey, right, from when I first get them when they're 6 years old all the way to they're 14 years old, that whole progress they made, that it feels pretty awesome. So
Cool. That's really cool. Yeah. And so I know you're doing a lot more lending now. Would you mind sharing with everyone kind of exactly your lending box and how you're connecting and doing all those things so that, people know how to work with you later on?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we're just focused in the Georgia market. So that was one of the things where investors have buy boxes, and us as lenders, we have our own lending box criteria. So for private money lending, we're primarily focused just here in Georgia, first position, because it's super secure, and you're not going to get these high, sexy returns with you're getting 20% annualized returns under that. We could potentially get up to 18% annualized returns, but nothing like 30%, those outrageous, crazy high returns. But we do lend between 12% annualized up to 18% annualized returns with monthly interest payments. Just depends on the deal. And then we do charge an origination point up front. It could vary between zero point 0.5 to about 2% of origination. So that's just an initial skin in the game for the investor. Um, Primarily, ours are more on the acquisition side. So when an investor comes to us, they need capital to acquire a property. We'll give them that money to acquire the property. It works a little bit better. Well, I don't want to say better, but it just works depending on the time crunch they have, the investor has, right? And so I give him two options. I was like, hey, you could use our private money, or if you don't want to use our private money and it's a little bit too expensive, maybe I have hard money lenders for you as well. And I'm happy to provide you soft terms, right? And typically hard money lenders, depending on their experience, depending on where they're at, they may only get charged like 10 or 11% interest annualized. So that's a little bit cheaper than the 18% annualized returns. So I give investors two options. I'm like, hey guys, these are the two options you guys have. And people that want to deploy money into our projects, again, it's just first secure loans, first position loans, so which makes it super secure, and we underwrite it where it makes sense. If we need to foreclose on that property, we can foreclose and recoup the money plus a little bit some to cover all the fees and closing fees if, with during auctions and stuff like that. We haven't gone through that yet, so knock on wood. But the underwriting process is there to keep us secure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, we've heard, me and Liz have heard from a lot of other people, their stories about how they did, these second position loans that sounded really great and really appealing and, really high returns. And then those didn't work out. And so many people went from, okay, I'm doing these second position loans, and then they pivoted into first position after having the story similar to yours. But a lot of them actually, I mean, $8,000 is nothing to sneeze at, and I don't want to lose $8,000, but also a lot of them lost like 80 or more,
Yeah.
right? And so we've heard all of that, and Liz and I primarily focus on first position loans as well for that exact reason. And so we thank you so much for sharing your story. Now, you mentioned something about hard money and private money lending, and I want to help just other people who aren't maybe as familiar. Could you clarify the difference between hard money lending and private money lending?
Yeah, so when it comes to private money, it's more like Andrea, Liz, and myself, right? Saying, hey, we have capital. We have an investor that we know he needs capital to acquire this property. Let's say that they need 100. Let's say that yeah, they need $100,000. Andrea comes with $50,000 because she has a whole bunch of more money than I do. I come in with 25. Liz comes in with 25. So there's our 100,000. We give the investor the 100,000 and he acquires that property. Pretty straightforward. And we come up with our own terms, right? Andrea says, hey, no, we're going to charge this investor 18% annualized returns. Liz and I agree. And we're either in a same LLC or we could go in first title position on under the security deed as commons and tenants, and there's a I'm trying to remember what exactly it's called, but we could all our three LLCs can go in first position in that property. You don't want to have like 20 people. You can't do up to 20, right? You could do three or four investors in that first position, maybe up to five, depending on your state. But here in Georgia, we've done a transaction where it was a $2 million transaction, and it was all private money, and there was five LLCs on that closing doc, and all of us came in with this certain amount. One of the investors was the big whale, and he came in with a huge amount of money. So it's possible, but it's all private money, and we set our own terms, right? We set our own agreements. We say, hey, you need to pay us back in 6 months, you need to pay us back in a year, we'll give you up to 18 years. So everything's negotiable when it comes to private money, right? We could say, hey, we'll we'll lend you the money, but you need to give us, let's say, just an example, you need to give us $10,000 up front, and then we'll lower that interest rate for you, right? So everything's negotiable when it comes to private money, and I think that's why a lot of investors want to go to private money lenders, because there's more wiggle room, there's more variables. Hey, I'll give you this if you give me this, right? Uh, Hard money lending is very institutional money. They're very rigid. They have their own standard terms per se, right? That an investor can't go to them and negotiate terms. It's like, nope, hey, this is what you qualify for. This is what it is. this are the terms we're going to give you, and you either take it or you go shop around, right? Go to another lender. But since they are institutional, they potentially will give you lower interest rates, right? And it's a lengthier process to close with them. A lot of hard money lenders say they can close in less than 10 days. Reality is that many can't close in 10 days, right? Unless if you're a super seasoned experienced investor and you have everything completely, you know, all the documentation that you need. But typically I've seen it pass more than 10 days, but it's a great option, right, for investors to understand both of these options when it comes to acquiring a rental or potentially acquiring a fix and flip. The other thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the type of loans we do, we're just on the fix and flip loans. We're using our money to help them acquire it, they fix it, they sell it, and then we recoup our money back. There are private money lenders out there that will lend on longer term plays. Um, but there is hard money lending like DSCR loans that you could use to acquire long-term rentals to keep them for a longer period of time. So yeah,
Yeah.
understanding these two different types of products is important when you're an investor and looking for capital.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for explaining that. I know the term HML or hard money lender gets thrown out a lot, and I think that sometimes there's confusion. And is that the same as PMO? Is it different? So that was a great explanation. Thank you for that. Have you had any of your flips kind of go over in the timeline that was expected?
Yes, yeah, they did.
How do
and
you? Yeah, go
and
ahead. Sorry.
and it's funny because it's always, depending on the investor either owns it, or they blame a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just that's where the paperwork is so important, right? Understanding what you wrote on that paperwork, what type of clauses are in there. Hey, if you go past this amount of time on the on the second loan I did was one of those. Yeah, where the loan has gone way past that, and the property did not sell. The investor could not refinance because he said he needed to come out of pocket too much. And it goes back to, again, what was on that paperwork? How was that paperwork written? I have heard other investors that I had on my YouTube channel, Damien, he had one where it did go long term, right? But he was able to structure, hey, I'm gonna give you monthly payments, right, until my other fix and flip sells. Then I'll be able to pay you back, right? It's all comes to, I mentioned earlier, right, about vetting the borrower and vetting the deal, right? Or kind of like, hey, yep, I had a good vibe about this person, but I didn't understand the deal at all. And in this business, you have to do both, right? If you're security, if you're lending on a second position, that is so important. But if you're in first position and if it goes past overdue, you're going to be the one that's going to end up winning, right? Because you're going to be able to foreclose on this property or complete this property, depending on the type of lender you are, and make your money back, right? So if it's in the paperwork that if they don't pay X amount of money by X amount of time, right, after 30 days or whatever you put in the paperwork, you have the right to foreclose on that property, or they could just deed that property back over to you, and now you have a decision to make, right? So that's the power of being in first position. When you're in second position, yeah, you have no right. I mean, it's like you're just betting on the borrower completely. And at that point, it's up to the borrower to really say, hey, I'm going to make you right. I'm going to make you whole, right? Whether this deal didn't pencil out, I got you. And they could sign personal guarantee. You could potentially go after them, but that personal guarantee is nothing, right? If they file bankruptcy, you're done. You can't, like, so yeah.
Yeah.
And the second deal I had was a second lien position, and
Mm.
yeah,
How did
and
that? And you
and
didn't
and
get your
and
money
and the
back?
and the borrower is, I'm going to pay you back, Edgar. We got you. We're going to pay you back.
Oh,
So we're having, it's still in the conversation, right? Which is good, right? Because at least it's somewhat of a cushion. I don't want to say cushion, right? But it's at least somewhat of a, hey, he's still there, right? He's still trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, it's tough, right? When you make those knucklehead second position moves. Not saying
Mhm.
all of them are like that, right? Because there are good investors out there that, like I said, they're when things go south, they have a backup plan, and they're not completely over leveraged on properties that are not good, right? So
Right.
yeah, vetting
Yeah.
the borrower is one of the important things. Is
Yeah.
what type of
I like
deals are
that.
you into? Yeah, it's like how many deals you have going on. If they have more than four or potentially more than two, depending on their liquidity, that's a red flag, right? Because it's like, what happens if these both deals don't go right? If you don't have liquidity, right? And I didn't know none of that stuff, so it was uh, it was tough.
Yeah, all this has been like really great advice, obviously, especially like going back to, well, what does your contract say, right? I see so many posts in social media with people saying, hey, I lent my money and they haven't paid me back. Like, what do I do? And it's like, well, what did your contract say? So, to your point, like, you really need to understand everything that's being written. And I love that you brought up the personal guarantee thing because I was like, oh, that's a great idea. We'll just add on the personal guarantee. But collecting it is actually really difficult, right? And so it's
Right.
just all these little caveats where you really just need to understand the full picture and how it actually works. So I know the personal guarantee was one of the things that stood out to me where I was like, oh, this is perfect. We'll just add this on. It's golden. And then understanding that it was harder to collect. So from your perspective, I know you've already shared a lot of things with us, but what would you say is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned now that you now know in your lending journey that you wish you would have known at the very beginning?
Yeah. For me, it's understanding the like where is your money being secured, right? Like that security to me, that was one of the big takeaways, right? Depending on where your money's secure, if it's in first position, right? First position, you pretty much own the property when you're in first position, right? You're the lender on that property, but whatever happens, you can recoup your money as long as you loan correctly on that amount of on the amount of what that property is worth, right? There are those instances where people don't understand the market and they overlend on that property, and let's say that property is only worth $80,000 and they lent $100,000 because they that investor told them that property was worth 100,000, but in reality it's not. Even though it's in first position, that's still not good, right? So to me, yes, understanding lean positions was super important. But at the end is how can you secure your money, right? This is money that we're using to grow and create that passive income, right? So understanding that is super important. Understanding the risk involved, even when you land in first or second position, to me, those two things were huge. And then the paperwork, so if I was going to say three things, those would be it, right? Understanding what you're lending against, understand your paperwork, and yeah, the lien position, right? Like, hey, how's my money going to be secure on this? A lot of investors want to say, hey, we need capital. Okay, well, how are you going to secure my money? Oh, it's against this asset. Yeah, but that asset has no equity. So that's not protection. So talk to me more. And then they're like, what do you mean? So yeah.
No, that's I mean, man, that's a good piece of advice. I think we're really getting into that ourselves now too. So that's really helpful to just understand more and making sure you're lending that right amount. I know so many people would say, "Oh, the after repair value or ARV is 350, so I'm lending on, 75% of 350." And when the as is value of the property currently is 150, it's like, okay, we can't do that. That's not how that works, right?
Exactly.
Because if they take your money and then they walk away, now you've lent on a property on the after repair value and no repairs have been done. And it's maybe completely demoed and maybe even in a worse position than when you actually, went under contract and loaned them the money anyway. So, yeah, a really, really solid piece of advice there.
Yeah, you hit it right there, Andrea. That's so true.
Yeah. So, with Liz and I balancing, I mean, we're both pharmacists. You still have your W-2 job as well. There's so much balancing that's going on. And how do you really keep it all straight? Like, are there any habits or routines you've developed to keep yourself on track with your goals? Anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, so us being part of owners last year, Pace talked about intentionality with our calendar. So my calendars definitely helped me a lot, setting up dedicated time blocking where I could make those calls to investors, reach out or at least create my social media branding more, right? Where I could provide the services I'm offering or share a little bit about my journey in the private money lending side. So definitely time blocking has helped a lot. I'm not perfect by no means. I have 5 kids, and like I said, I coach and I have a W-2. So there's a lot of balancing, like a lot of things that happen during the day where it's like, all right, well, we got to pivot. But I think that's where this gives me that flexibility, right? And but definitely time blocking. If nobody's done time blocking before, I take it back to my Dave Ramsey days when I was budgeting, so it kind of aligns with that. And I was a big spender. My wife was the one that had everything, so I tell her, "You're my accountability. Help me with my time blocking. Try to keep me in order."
Like that. I like that. I mean, that's such a good way to stay organized. And we actually have heard that a lot from a lot of different guests. Time blocking is probably the number one answer to that question, I would think, so far. I think that seems to be maybe the most popular thing. And then thinking about just, I need this advice personally, so I'm asking this as a personal question. You know, to meet to do the co-lending that you're doing, and I know you're doing it at scale and at a nice, very sizable volume, at least from the private money lending uh, workshop thing that Liz and I attended, and you did as well. Heard a lot about that. What specific habits, besides the time blocking for the time to meet with investors, have you done in order to build that part of your business up?
Yeah, I mean, being in the healthcare space, it gives us that opportunity to connect with other professionals, right? That are curious about wanting to get into real estate. So to me, it's always, I know we have a W-2, but there's nothing wrong with telling others that you're a private money lender, right? And I think that was one of the habits that I recently picked up. Tell people what you do, right? And to me, that is a habit, right? Because I think a lot of us want to hide behind our own professions. That I'm an engineer, or you're a pharmacist. Yes, that is the profession that we chose, right? And that probably I'm passionate about what I do, and probably y'all are passionate about what y'all do as well. But there's nothing wrong with us saying, hey, we're private money lenders. We're invested in real estate, right? And I still want to get better at doing that in LinkedIn because I know LinkedIn is a huge gateway to professionals, so sharing our journeys through LinkedIn, which I have not been doing. I've been mostly focused on Instagram and Facebook, but that is one thing where we need to share, hey, why did we get into private money lending, right? What does that give us? What flexibility does that provide? And letting others know that. One of the habits, like I said, is I do talk like to people that I work with. Hey, I recently got into private money lending and real estate. So just sharing with people what you do, I think that is somebody, like, that is a habit that you need to perform, right? That you need to, not hide. Because the more people know about what you do, more people are going to want to say, Andrea, really? I remember, or, somebody that says, hey, my coworker Andrea says she's into lending and real estate. You may want to talk to her, right? And who knows, that person may be like a big time developer or investor, right? And now you just made a connection because of what you said. So to me, I think a lot of us hide behind our professions, and that kind of holds us back, right, from growing. If you are into private money lending, other people want to hide it because maybe they want to get fix and flips, right? And they don't want their profession to know that they're fix and flippers or
Right.
whatnot. But still, right, that shouldn't hold people back from letting them know that they are in real estate.
Right. I agree because you're right. If you don't tell them, then how do they know? Right. It sounds so
Yeah.
obvious, but it's a great way to network with your other colleagues and perhaps grow your lending business at the same time while you're educating them. So, on that same note, so let's keep in mind we all have W 2s, right? And so, if you are talking to, let's say, your fellow colleagues at your W 2 and they're interested in growing their financial independence journey, but they're just starting, right? So, they're new, they're nervous. What, like in 30 seconds, piece of advice would you give them to get started?
Really understand where they're at in their journey, I think, because all of us are at different points. Some people have gone from jobs to jobs and they have just like IRAs or 401ks that are just sitting there, right? And they're not doing much. So that's a different conversation with that person. And it to me it really comes to understanding what their goals and understanding where they're at in their journey, right? So if like I said, if there if it's an individual that has 401ks just sitting there, it's a different conversation because that money can easily be put to work. But now if it's an individual that maybe has like a rainy fund saving, that's a different conversation, right? Because that rainy fund saving, the risk of potentially them not having that money if something happens, right? Because even if it's a fix and flip project, we say, hey, your money's going to be there for potentially 6 months. But what happens if it's there longer, right? And now they need their money because it's an emergency. So to me, it's, hey, understand your journey. Where are you at, right? Where like the capital you have, how long can you deploy it for, right? What's the risk involved? Again, first position the better because you're secure, but understanding that your capital could be in there longer than probably somebody told you. We like to say, hey, 6 months, but if the market doesn't sell in 6 months, could it go 8 months? Could it go 10 months, right? Or could we refinance and potentially you only get X amount of back? Are you okay with that? If it's a Roth IRA or like a Roth IRA or self-directed IRA, there's less of a, people are going to be okay. Well, that money was just sitting there. I can't touch it regardless, right? But if it's somebody's actual savings, that's a different conversation. So I really want to understand where they're at in their journey when it comes to, hey, I want to get into real estate investing. Well, tell me a little bit about, right? Where are you at?
Yeah,
Um,
those are great points and so important, I think, for everyone to understand that not everyone lending is going to be in the same box, right? So I think you touched on it perfectly is that you need to understand like what their expectations are, what their timelines are, and what their risk level is, right? Because you're
right,
right, if it is just sitting in a retirement account, which so many of us W-2 workers do have retirement accounts, and they are just, a lot of them are just sitting there, right? And they may be growing very slowly, but we don't have access. We can't take that money out without penalty, right? And so it's a great opportunity to roll that money into another account and use it for lending, just like you talked about. So I like how you put those in different buckets, right? Like, is it a
yeah.
retirement account? Is it a rainy day fund? Because those definitely want to be managed differently. So I love that. Do you personally have experience in using your retirement accounts for lending?
I don't. So when I transferred jobs, I rolled my money into my current employer. So if you have money with your current employer, you cannot use that as an investment. It has to be, an old employee's 401k that has been sitting there potentially. But if you're an active and if you have an employee, right, that you're active with, you can't use their 401k. They'll have to manage it for you. So yeah, so I've rolled it into my current employee, and it's like, oh, why did I do that?
It's
But
the things we learn, right? It's so funny
yeah,
afterward. But that sounded like, I mean, I have now rolled into a self-directed retirement account from my old employer, but I was thinking, man, I've got all these accounts in different places. It'd be nice to have them all in one, so I could see
mm,
exactly why you might have done that, right? But yeah, next time, if there's a next time that you have an old employer, you'll know.
right,
And you can at least tell people, other people, if they have the old accounts, like they can do that same thing. Um,
yeah.
so we've been talking so much about money and business and all the things. I know that a lot of us are have the goals of the time freedom and other things that come with it. And so Liz and I have a goal to travel and get outside and have fun while we're on this journey. So we want to hear if you have any upcoming bucket list things that you're hoping to cross off in the next couple of years.
Oof. Yeah, I think one of the big buckets is definitely taking the entire family. One of my boys wants to go to France, so that's going to be pretty fun. My other boy wants to go to Japan, so those are things in the bucket list there, and I'm hoping we can make pretty sure we'll make them happen. It's just a matter of getting me and my wife. They're little. My youngest is 6, so it's like is it a good time now, or should we wait a little bit more? So you can really capture the full experience. But it's one of those things. But yeah, definitely want to travel out to Europe or Japan. So
Yeah,
that'd be one of the bucket lists to do with the entire family.
that's awesome. And I can't imagine like the coordination involved in 7 people getting out there. That sounds like how many hotel rooms do you need? And like, or do you, I don't even know. Like that sounds intense, but that's really cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's nice that that's their kind of bucket list thing also like driving that. Did they have any particular reasons behind France or Japan, or is it just something they saw like online?
Yeah, so France is big soccer. There's a team PSG, and there's a big soccer guy out there. His name's Mape. So there's big fans of him, and that we want to go out there. It's not like we're gonna meet him, but just to say we were in France.
We were
you know,
there.
yeah. And then Japan, just because the whole anime, and it's I want to go to Japan because of the sushi. So I'm in. Take me.
Hey, sign me up. I would love. We hear Japan a lot too. I feel like that comes up as a common answer to this question, and I'm on board for the sushi. That sounds like that would be amazing. So
Yeah,
I will just also, you already have a lot going with your family. So if you just add one more, I don't think anyone will
let's
even
go.
like notice at this point. So you're golden. Okay, so let's just recap here. So I know that you were doing fix and flips in Georgia. So are you looking for both lending opportunities and you're also looking to help connect with people that are looking to lend their own money? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So if you're a fix and flipper, right, and you're investing here in Georgia, or if you're a fix and flipper nationwide, like I said, we could do hard money loans to you. But if you're a fix and flipper here in Georgia, we have private money that we can help you support your projects. But if you're looking to get into real estate and you want to learn more and you want to invest here in Georgia, definitely welcome an opportunity to be a resource for you here, whether you're either acquiring a rental or whether you just want to get into real estate, whether it's co-living, whatever it is, right? I want to be that resource for you here in Georgia. And then if we can collaborate down the road, yeah, let's make it happen. But yeah, so primarily, like I said, focus here in Georgia, but when it comes to like loans, right, we have that hard money lending option there for nationwide lending as a resource. Or if you're acquiring a rental, we could provide a DSCR loan for you as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I wanted everyone to be clear, like what opportunities that you have so that they can reach out to you. You obviously are a great resource with experience. And so I highly encourage anyone that does have questions, or maybe they would like to lend in Georgia and see maybe the experience of a flip, to reach out to you, because I always advocate for working with people that obviously have experience in doing it and have seen things actually go wrong, right? Because that's how you learn. So I think that you are a great connection for everyone that would like to do that. So, with that in mind, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you moving forward?
Yeah, my Instagram handle is there. It's Edgar Vargas. That'd be the best way. I stay active in Instagram. You can definitely send me a message through Facebook Messenger, but yeah, let's connect through Instagram. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, it's been so fun to get to know you, Edgar. We really appreciate this. And it seems like we're also, you and me and Liz are on a very similar journey. So I'm excited to continue to collaborate with you going forward, because I know you're a little bit farther along in your journey than we are. So we have a lot to learn from you, and we've appreciated your time here so much. uh,
Awesome. Well, pleasure being here. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Andrea, for the invite and giving me this opportunity to share my journey. And hopefully help others avoid those knucklehead decisions that I made early on.
I love it. I love it. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into this week's episode of From Corporate to Cashflow. We will catch you next week. Hey, it's Andrea. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, I'd love it if you hit subscribe. Thanks so much.